The free market versus statism. Thus far, we've learned the true history of communication media and rightly positioned it against the lenses of entropy and the statism which Martin Luther and his revolution rolled out. We've also recognized the history of the world, which the communication media have reflected as a struggle between two tendencies, centralization and decentralization. Going against erroneous mainstream history popularized by the likes of Max Weber, we properly identified the Catholic Church as the patron of decentralization, and Martin Luther and his Protestant revolutionaries as agents of centralization. In this video, we will explain further what free market capitalism is and why it is ultimately Catholic, in sync with natural law and thus the inevitable movement of entropy in the spreading of energy and information towards civilization. In so doing, we will also show how Luther's and the Protestant statist forces of control, mandates, and intervention have merely increased the movement of entropy and thus caused a certain disorder, that much ado about nothing in the inefficient and highly wasteful rollout and expenditure of energy and information leading to decivilization. We begin by defining the free market. Recall the various alternatives to both monarchy and democracy, which Hans Hermann Hoppe identifies and properly places under the umbrella of the natural order. Ordered anarchy, private property, anarchism, auto-government, private law society, pure capitalism, and my personal favorite, anarcho-capitalism. All are social orders within a free market, where every scarce resource is owned privately, where every enterprise is funded by voluntarily paying customers or private donors, and where entry into every line of production, including justice, police, and defense services, is free. Meaning, you may opt out at any time if you so wish. Certainly, a short video such as this cannot completely explain the intricacies of the free market, but at its most bare in a way that can be understandable and useful for those who do not have the time to delve into its details, it is simply this: the natural situation of all men with body and soul with a God-given gift of free will. And what is this natural situation? Given body, soul, and free will, each man can and should figure out for himself what he can and should, regardless of whether his choices may be a good or bad one, as long as he does not physically harm other men, in which case those he harms will respond in kind or in whatever way they deem fit to preserve their own natural state, body, soul, and free will. Recall the natural evolution of the impetus to connect and communicate with other men, from simple signs and symbols of stone, smoke, fire, paintings, and more sophisticated structures to electronic wires and cables, where the essence of coding and coded messages remained and were transmitted in more complex and sophisticated ways, from the printing press to the telephone, broadcasting, the Internet of Things, body and money, all of which needed and yielded a lubricant and measure for the running of the interaction and exchange. At its core, civilization is based on a transmission mechanism, and in a free market, this transmission mechanism does not defy the second law of thermodynamics, entropy. In a free market, the natural order is the premise, and so the value of goods and services exchanged, which is captured by price, knowledge, and the signals that communicate information, is based on human action. It is entrepreneurial. In a statist system, an unnatural and artificial order is created, where the value of goods and services exchanged are priced and manipulated by a few actors, government, state, or their special friends. The value and price system is created via human design. It is managerial. The few manage the many. But the more control, the more out of control. Mainstream history has popularized the idea of the crucial significance and necessity of state and central control for peace and order. However, both biblical history with the reality of original sin and the yield of the secular realm of science, entropy, will disagree, and even history itself, with the record of real and actual events, proves otherwise. Hans Hermann Hoppe tells us, in taxing and regulating private property owners and market income earners, all governments are counterproductive. Precisely, the fact that Europe possessed a highly decentralized power structure composed of countless independent political units explains the origin of capitalism, that which has made civilization prosperous as opposed to socialism. It is not by accident that capitalism first flourished under conditions of extreme political decentralization in the northern Italian city-states, in southern Germany, and in the secessionist Low Countries, the Netherlands. The opposite of prosperity is, however, happening in Europe today with its adoption of more socialist and statist orders. Through taxation and regulation, governments do not positively contribute to the creation of economic wealth. Instead, they parasitically draw on existing wealth. Centralization has also resulted in monetary disintegration, the destruction of the former international commodity, gold money standard, and its replacement with a dollar-dominated system of freely fluctuating government paper monies, that is, a global US-led government counterfeiting cartel. In a more decentralized world with hundreds of thousands of independent political units, each country or territory would have to abandon the current fiat fake money system, which has been responsible for the greatest worldwide inflation in all of human history, for a more organic system of transmission based on human action. Interestingly, economist Joseph Schumpeter and anarcho-capitalist Murray Rothbard discovered much of the free market spirit and logic in the writings from ancient archives of Catholic monks and scholars, particularly St. Thomas Aquinas and the late scholastics. Contrary to popular history, Calvinist, Protestant Adam Smith and David Ricardo were not the inventors of the concept of the free market. In fact, at their core, both Smith and Ricardo are Marxist, socialist, and statist. Free market ideas and the theory of money came from St. Thomas Aquinas and the late scholastics. Catholic priests, friars, and monks were the first financial analysts and economists, and in fact, enterprise was preached, practiced, and lived by monks in the religious form of life known as monasticism. It remains a mystery as to how, why, and when princes of the Catholic Church ceased dabbling in economics, finance, and the money enterprise. But since they left, the field and practice devolved into the gambling den known as global finance, where the financial economy, a bubble and den of tricksters, gangsters, and get-rich schemes and Ponzi's, has replaced the real economy, which simply means the production of actual goods and services. But we've been walking on water, on unicorns and rainbows, in a house of cards on sand, yielding Hollywood, Silicon Valley, Netflix, and more recently, effeminate Korean pop. Socialists successfully made us believe money was evil and should thus not be touched by a holy profession. And so socialists filled in the empty seats from which monks, friars, and priests organically preached the proper marriage between sound money, enterprise, human interaction, and life. St. Thomas Aquinas defines natural law as the participation of intellectual creatures in eternal law, God's plan leading all creation to its final end. Natural law constitutes participation by the human intellect in God's plan for what is right and ordered. That is the eternal law. The scholastics believe that The more humans accommodate their actions to natural law, the greater the prospects for success in their actions. Human good is in accord with reason, which a free market in its raw, organic, and decentralized reality enables with the rollout of true human action, which would necessarily tie in with reason, as good is what good is, reasonable, thus the likely and probable direction and choice of human action, hence achieving civilization. Indeed, the free market will naturally lead you to choose that which you ought on your own for yourself, versus the devolving road we've been on since Martin Luther. The free market is within the realm of the natural order, while statism is the artificially created order by the few on the many. It's an algorithm, now devolving into AI. The next step, artificiality, training individuals to the collective in a cloud, abandoning body and soul as well as free will. All thinking will move from the algorithm manufactured reality in the social media to the AI, seamlessly embedding itself in the mind, which has been trained to submit in the name of convenience, safety, health, and order. Natural law, the supernatural, and entropy are all in sync. Statism isn't.